Welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv, based in San Diego, California. And today I'm joined by Ryan Munsey. He is the Chief Optimizer at Natural Stacks, and he's also host of the Optimal Performance Podcast. So actually, as I've been trying to build Lou Aviv, and I've been writing, and I've been working on a book and writing the blog for Lou Aviv, I've realized I'm kind of like a junkie for human performance and potential. And I just found the Optimal Performance Podcast, so I've been like binge listening through those like all the way back. And you got some cool people on there, man.
Yeah, hey, I'm flattered and honored that you listen to the show. It's amazing, and I'm sure you get this too as a podcast host. You never know who's listening, and when people come up to you and they say, you know, man, I listen to the show, like it's crazy to me who listens, and so I'm honored that you listen to our show and enjoy it.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy because, you know, we're here. It's just us two in this room, and you forget about the fact that there's like, you know, thousands of people that can just download this at any time.
Yep.
And it's not local, too. That's the thing, too. I don't know if you ever go back and look at who listens to the show, but we got people in Europe. And
yeah, so I got to speak at the biohacking summit in Finland last fall, and this guy comes up to me after my talk. He'd asked me a question, and he actually found me after I talked and was asking more questions. And he was like, yeah, I actually listened to the Optimal Performance Podcast. I love the show. Turns out he was a rower for the Dutch Olympic team, and he finished 5th in the Rio Olympics.
Really?
I'm like, this dude listens to my podcast, or our podcast, and so he's actually he's going to put everything he has into the next 4 years and try to medal in 2020 Olympics. And so his name is Hover, if Hover or Gover, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but if he wins for the Dutch rowing team in 2020, maybe I'll take some credit for it.
Yeah. You know, if I'm 5th in the Olympics, I'm going to try another 4 years. I want to get on the podium.
Yeah.
But also, too, that being said, if you listen to Lionheart Radio and you are an Olympian, you need to email us because I need to know that.
Yeah, don't lurk in the shadows. Let us know.
Yeah, we need to get you on the show. So biohacking conference, is that the Dave Asprey one?
This was a different organization. These guys, the European group is a little bit different. It was eye-opening for me as an American to go over there and see, you know, how the Europeans define biohacking and what it means to them.
Yeah.
This particular one was in Helsinki, Finland. I'll actually be going back in May for one in Stockholm, Sweden. But the Europeans really look within the body. They look at science, and then they actually look towards nature for a lot of their answers and a lot of their biohacks. There was a lot of we had a dinner the night before. We did a lot of foraging. We ate a lot of local food. We ate moss that they went out and picked. We had reindeer tartare,
really?
Which, if you don't know, like tartare is raw meat. So we literally ate raw reindeer. That was amazing.
Really?
Yeah, I love tartare. Yeah, and it was really cool. But like they talked about, you know, all the different types of mushrooms that grow in Finland. Mushrooms are a huge thing in the supplement world right now, and I think one of the biggest brands is actually Four Sigmatic. That's a Finnish company.
Right. I started taking the Four Sigmatic coffee with lion's mane. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just took it this morning, actually.
Lion's mane's awesome. We've got a product with that, and we can talk about that when we get into nootropics. But you know, to kind of wrap up that thought, you know, I think in America, most of us, you know, you ask about Dave Asprey, and that biohacking connotation for a lot of Americans is, you know, like I said, there's a connotation of looking for a shortcut, right? Like maybe people don't want to do the work, and I think
biohacking,
right? Yeah. And I don't think that's how people in the biohacking community aren't thinking like that. That's not how they define it. But I think people outside of it maybe see it that way.
Yeah.
Most biohackers, at least in the U.S., or the ones maybe associated with like the quantified self movement, are looking at technology, and you know, you think about whether it's like a wearable fitness tracker or a headband that helps you meditate or things like that. Whereas I think in Europe, like I said, a lot of it was on looking back to nature. So it's kind of like paleo meets biohacking.
Yeah. And it seems like that might be the trend of biohacking. Like it started with science. Except if you think about it, doctors were probably the original biohackers, right? Like they're trying to get more out of your health, right? Out of your body, whatever.
Right.
And I think the trend now is that it's kind of coming back to these natural remedies, the paleo movement and different stuff like that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, to me, biohacking is just if you break the word down, a hacker is somebody who seizes control of a system,
Okay.
and bio is biology, right? So we want to manipulate our biology through the inputs, our actions, whether it's diet, whether it's workouts and fitness, whether it's meditation, sleep. All of these things kind of fall under that umbrella because they all impact performance. And
Yeah.
you said that you've kind of become obsessed with human performance and potential, and that's where I am. That was, I fell in love with that in college, and my degree was food science and human nutrition. I'm very passionate about the foods we eat, how that impacts us. How we can train our bodies and they can take on a different look, they can perform differently. And I've been doing that since before biohacking was a word.
Yeah.
So then as soon as I heard about biohacking and what it was, I kind of identified myself as a biohacker. But like I said, there's a lot of people outside of the biohacking community that are like, I think these are just people looking for shortcuts.
Yeah.
But I would disagree.
Yeah, and that's funny because that's what I told you when we first met is I was like, everything seems like a biohack because it's a buzzword.
Yeah.
And people like to put it in their email and get more clicks and whatever, and I get that. But that is a really good way to put it, and I think that more people should think of it that way. Because if it were phrased that way to me, I would be like, that is exactly what I want in life.
I mean, if you can control and manipulate an input to get the desired output, I think you'd be willing to do that. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean,
sure.
You're looking for a tactical advantage. Why would you not do that? This is your life. I mean,
right.
We want to get as much out of it as we can. So let's have as much energy. Let's be as happy as we can. Let's be as strong and as fast and whatever you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what happened to me. I had this goal of running 100 miles and being able to deadlift 500 pounds. And when I got there, I'm like, okay, could I run 200 miles? Could I? You know what I mean? And it just kind of.
Yeah.
And now I'm just really curious of like what I'm going to be capable of. And then same thing with cognition, right?
Yeah. And I think that's something that, nootropics are kind of new.
Yeah.
Maybe in terms of like a buzzword. But from the dawn of man, our species has been trying to survive with intelligence. I mean, that's the thing that separated us from, the versions of sapiens that didn't are no longer here, right? And that's the thing that separates us from other animals in the kingdom. Is our ability to, make tools and develop science and technology that have allowed us to live, the life that we have now that, other animals aren't able to do. So I would argue that man has been trying to coax as much intelligence out of our brain as we can possibly coax for as long as possible. I mean, you mentioned mushrooms. I mean, that's a nootropic that's been around forever.
Yeah. So do you see nootropics as manufactured nootropics is like the next step in our not forever escape trying to get away from Darwin, like our next, right?
So I think we classify nootropics at Natural Stacks when we talk about them. We'll break them down into a couple different categories. And so there are synthetics. You're looking at things like modafinil or Provigil.
Adderall.
Adderall is, I don't consider that a nootropic as much as, that's, it's an amphetamine.
Yeah.
And it's a prescription drug. I guess some people do use it as a nootropic.
It'll 10x productivity.
It definitely can, but that's because it's a methamphetamine.
Right.
So there's the synthetic category. Then there's like the pharmaceutical kind of gray area, and this would be things like the racetams. I talked to Dr. Andrew Hill, who's a neuroscientist, and he kind of corrected me in saying that some of what we were considering natural, like maybe a choline that's been manufactured, is not that far removed from a racetam. So he didn't really like that gray area of a racetam, but that's how we define the racetams. So with Natural Stacks, we don't produce anything that's synthetic. All of our products are natural. So we don't have any nootropics that include the racetams.
Okay.
Because to us, that's kind of in that gray area. It's a synthetic compound. All of our nootropics are using things that are derived from nature. So Siltep is our flagship nootropic, and it has 5 ingredients. They are artichoke extract and forskolin. Okay. So artichoke obviously is a vegetable. Forskolin is an Ayurvedic herb that's been used for centuries. And then the other 3 ingredients are phenylalanine, which is an amino acid, L-carnitine, and another amino acid, and then vitamin B6.
Okay.
So, when we say natural, that's what we're talking about. And our formula is patented on the patent, it's listed as a cognitive enhancer. CILTEP is different from any other nootropic. So not to get too much into like a commercial for CILTEP, but it increases something called cyclic AMP, and it downregulates something called PDE4, which is an enzyme that actually reduces and inhibits cyclic AMP. So we have inhibition of PDE4 and then direct increase of cyclic AMP through the forskolin. So when we have elevated levels of cyclic AMP in our brain, it potentiates something called LTP, or long-term memory.
Okay.
So, subjectively, the experience on CILTEP is an increased desire to learn or be engaged, increased novelty. Something I just noticed the other day is that to me, it really slows time down. The days where I take CILTEP seems so much longer because
you can think clearer, right?
Yeah,
you can see the big picture.
I'll look at the clock and it's like 9:15, and then I look at the clock again and it's 9:45, and I feel like it should be 10:45
because of what you've done, because of productivity.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I've just been completely dialed in. I've gotten so much done, and I've done more in that 30 minutes than or I've done in 30 minutes what might normally take me an hour or something. That's my subjective experience. Objectively, we've actually attached my brain. The same guy I mentioned earlier, Dr. Andrew Hill, runs Peak Brain Institute in LA. We hooked my brain up to a QEEG, which is a qualitative electroencephalogram, and it measures the brain waves in your brain. And we did it with and without CILTEP. So my brain at baseline with nothing in it, no caffeine, no food, no nothing, I actually produce a little bit more alpha brain waves than the average person. So my ratio of alpha to beta brain waves is skewed with a little bit more alpha than we would want. And when you have this relationship of what's quote unquote too much alpha to beta, the experience there is inattention. And it's usually associated with the diagnosis of being ADD.
Yeah, okay.
If you have too much theta brainwave to beta ratio, then that's ADHD. So you see like impulsiveness.
Okay. I think I got a solid mix of them going on right over here.
So there's a really cool point that Dr. Hill made was, this isn't pathology. This is just, this is just how your brain is. If you have ADD, it's not a death sentence. It doesn't mean that you can't be a high-performing individual.
No, I would argue that most high-performing individuals do have ADD.
I would argue that as well. But what we found was that when I took CILTEP, my alpha brain waves actually were 1 to 2 standard deviations lower.
Okay.
Just with a single pill. That wasn't even a full dose. The full dose is actually 3 pills, and I only took 1 the day we tested it because that's what I take on a normal day.
Okay.
Not only do I have my own subjective experience on CILTEP, but we also have that N=1 experiment of being able to show that. So we're actually pursuing some marketing and some pilot studies with QEEG and Peak Brain. But we also have 2 university studies underway with CILTEP as well to test focus and memory.
So if you would have taken Adderall or something that they would prescribe for ADD, would you have seen that same reduction in alpha to beta ratio?
I don't know the answer to that. Dr. Hill may have the answer to that, or somebody, that literature may be out there. I'm not sure. I find it hard to believe that a methamphetamine would lower that, but obviously it does have a beneficial.
There's got to be some reason it originally got prescribed.
Right.
Besides just being awesome.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Okay, so that's interesting. And I told you right out of the gate that I was like a little skeptical of neurotropics.
Right.
I've taken Onnit's Alpha Brain. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with it?
I am.
Familiar with what's in it?
Yeah.
Okay. And how does it compare to your product?
Okay. So the one thing that I would say, and your skepticism on nootropics is, I think that's healthy, and I think it's normal. I think a lot of people should have that. The one thing that kind of bothers me about people just jumping into nootropics is it's very much like just jumping into any endeavor, fitness, for example, without getting a baseline. right? So the QEEG was one way of getting a baseline for me. That shows me what my brain waves look like with nothing in my system. So now we know, okay, these are my brain waves. How do we want to alter them to increase my performance or get a better outcome, right? There's another way to do that, and that's by looking at your neurotransmitters. You can do that through either a saliva or a urine test. There's also a PDF called the Braverman test that people can take online. If you just go in Google and type in Braverman test, it pops right up. And that shows you your neurotransmitter nature, but also if you have any deficiencies.
Okay.
And neurotransmitters are responsible for mental processing speed, like choline. That's choline's role.
Okay.
Dopamine is responsible for confidence, motivation, assertiveness. Serotonin is responsible for mood, fear, anxiety. And then GABA is the inhibitory neurotransmitter, and it is responsible for anybody who's had an alcoholic drink in a social situation and you feel more at ease, that's GABA. Okay, so those are the four main neurotransmitters on the Braverman test. Now, talking about alpha brain specifically, I'm not as familiar with it as I am with our products, obviously, but I know that it is a cholinergic product. So it's boosting alpha brain waves. And for me, because we said, I've done a QEEG, I know that my alpha to beta brainwave ratio is too high in alpha. Right?
Yep.
So if I take something that increases my alpha brainwaves, it will skew me even more
the wrong direction
towards inattention.
Okay.
It makes me a little bit spacey. I get stuck in neutral. That doesn't mean that alpha brain is going to do that for every single person.
Right.
It just means that for somebody with already high levels of alpha brainwaves, we wouldn't want to increase those.
Sure.
So for me or somebody with that baseline, we want things that increase beta brainwaves.
Yep.
Now, if somebody has the opposite brainwave setting as me at baseline, then they would do really well with a choline booster or something that boosts brainwaves or alpha brainwaves.
Okay.
Right? So, just because, and I think that's why I say I want people to get a baseline for themselves, whether it's a neurotransmitter test or a QEEG. The QEEG is maybe cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So the neurotransmitter test is a great place to start. Like I said, it's free. You can get
What
it
did
on
you call
Google.
it?
It's the Braverman test.
Okay.
So Dr. Eric Braverman was a clinical psychologist, and this was a test that he developed. And he also wrote the book, The Edge Effect, and it's all about neurotransmitters and brain optimization. So that's a really cool book if people want to dive more into or learn more about neurotransmitters and brain optimization before you really start messing with nootropics. Because, as you can see, you can really take yourself the wrong way if you're taking the wrong nootropic for what you need.
Your profile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's like somebody, going in and squatting before, taking a movement analysis, and maybe that's not where they need to be starting, right?
Right.
So, the other thing is, I think we should take our nootropics based on not only our own profile, but what our goal is for that day. So CILTEP increases my focus and, gets me really dialed in. So I would take that on a day where I'm sitting at the computer all day long. I've got to, do kind of monotonous, tedious, mundane stuff.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if we're recording this in a conference room, if we were here with our team and it was like a whiteboard day and we were brainstorming, I may want to let that ADD roll and actually take something like a choline booster or alpha brain that's going to help me connect the dots, think laterally, be a little bit more creative.
Yeah.
So, there's also, there's goal and context to keep in mind too. Like what's your baseline? Where do you need to go, for each given day? What's your goal for that given day as well?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that's the one or two things that I would want anybody to keep in mind when they start with nootropics. And I don't think that's as intuitive as we would like it to be.
And how do you think caffeine compares?
So caffeine actually works on a different pathway, and it's a very synergistic effect for a lot of these nootropics.
Okay, so people could take them together.
Yeah, so like we've talked about butter coffee before,
Yeah.
and stacking Siltep with butter coffee or any kind of coffee is a huge synergistic effect. It's great, if you take Alpha Brain or anything else like that too.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting too, because if you are somebody that's on like a ketogenic or a fat adapted diet, the butter is great, but the medium chain fatty acids that can cross that blood-brain barrier for me are key if I'm going to do anything didactically at all.
Right.
So,
Right.
have you looked into anything natural at all? As far as I just wrote a BuzzFeed article on natural ways to enhance cognition, and some of it was like decreasing clutter and reduces stress, things like that.
Yep.
But exercise, is the big one for me, and I'm not talking about looking for performance in your fitness. I'm talking about trying to increase BDNF. Are you familiar with brain-derived neurotrophic factor?
Yeah.
So. And I'm not sure. So when I started taking on it, I wanted to believe. So that's why I told you I'm skeptical, because I'm like, I want to get better.
Right.
And then, I really didn't have it. And in talking to you, it might be because I am ADD and I probably have that elevated alpha to beta ratio.
Right.
So I wanted it to work, but it really didn't. But for me, if I do, say, 30 to 45 minutes of low-impact cardio where I stay in that aerobic threshold, so I don't go too far, because you go too far, you start creating mental, like, fog and things like that.
Right.
So for me, I found, like, 30 to 40 minutes of low-impact cardio on something not cool at all, like the elliptical or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But I hate it, but it works. And they've shown that increases that BDNF, which leads to the new cell creation for memory and cognition and things like that.
Yep.
So how do you think that kind of compares, or should everyone go for the pill route, or do you know what I'm saying? I'm kind of like, if I'm listening to this and I'm wondering, like, I'm interested in this.
I think they're all tools in the toolbox, and I think there are. So actually, I mentioned speaking in Finland. My talk there, we talked a lot about. I focused on the difference between states and traits. So a state is a short-term, transient way of being, right? Okay. So if I took Siltep today, it's going to alter my state today.
Okay.
But it's not there tomorrow unless I take Siltep, right? Same thing with caffeine or coffee, right? That's an altered state. It's a short-term or transient thing. Now, there are things that we can do to alter our traits. So the thing that actually led me down, that particular talk was about neurofeedback. And the neurofeedback really piqued my interest because this all started with Dr. Hill being on our show, the Optimal Performance Podcast. And he said that after the age of 65, every single human experiences cognitive decline except for one group of people. And those are people who meditate for their entire life. Lifetime meditators. Really? So there's something about meditating that spares the decrease in brain mass. It's like a 20% loss in certain parts of the brain after the age of 65. Now, the only people who are spared from that are people who meditate over their lifetime.
Can I start at 30?
Yeah. So, I mean, start now, right? Yeah. And do it for forever. And, I mean, meditation is awesome. I can't tell you how many high performers talk about some sort of meditation. And I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way. It's whatever works for you. Yeah. And the cool thing about neurofeedback was that within 10 to 12 weeks of direct neurofeedback training, you would get the same benefit from a lifetime of meditation. So I was like, all right, well, I got to check this out. Yep. And that's what led me to go to Peak Brain and to do all these brain scans and do all that stuff. But meditation would be something that changes your traits. Right. Okay? Yep. So people who are lifetime meditators are changing their traits. There are other things that change your traits, like if we program our training. So if I'm training in a BDNF in a manner that increases BDNF,
like that being the goal,
once or twice a week for the rest of my life, that's going to change a trait. That's something that stays with me beyond a transient state, right? So I don't think that it's take a pill or exercise to increase BDNF. I think it's all part of the same lifestyle, and they're all tools in the toolbox. So, I mean, obviously we know that sleep is a huge performance enhancer, both short-term and long-term. If you go for 10 years without getting quality sleep, the state and the traits are going to change,
Yeah.
right? So sleep is a big one. The way we eat is a big one. Being in ketosis is a state, but if you do it long enough, you're changing some traits as well,
Sure.
right? Again, this is kind of why I love biohacking. It's such an all-encompassing umbrella, and if we focus on all of it, every aspect of our life, from sleep to meditation to gratitude journaling, these are all things that are increasing traits and changing traits for positive outcomes. And then, sure, on a daily basis, we take some things, drink coffee. Or take nootropics to increase our state on any given day.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah. Something that's interesting or I'm curious about is that when you use exercise, the studies have shown, what I found in my research is that you'll create these new pathways that allow you to enhance cognition and enhance memory, but they'll go away if you don't use them.
Yep.
Have you found the same thing with CILTAP or with nootropics?
Well, CILTAP's really cool because like we said earlier, it increases long-term potentiation.
Okay.
So the long-term potentiation is how we catalog information and retain memories, right? So the short-term, the transient state of being on CILTAP, you're a little bit more engaged in what you're doing. There's more novelty, and you're more interested in it. But because long-term memory is potentiated, you're better able to recall that information later. And we've had memory grand champions test their memory, memorizing decks of cards with and without CILTAP, and their best times are all on CILTAP.
Yeah.
So, that is evidence that memory recall is enhanced when you take CILTAP. So, we say CILTAP's great for when you study because you can retain that information better. You're more efficient at storing and cataloging it, and then you can recall it better at a later time. So my analogy is that this is sort of like building your library or your bookshelf better or faster. And that stuff stays with you all the time. That doesn't go away. So, while the state may not last forever, the stuff that you put in, that information does stay in your brain.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah, so that is really cool. Now, I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, because the state would be great if you could prolong it, but really you're trying to prolong what you can get done in that state, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I look at it as trying to optimize my brain on a long-term and a short-term level, right? And if certain nootropics will help me in the short term, but then I'm focusing on lifestyle habits, and strategies that will beneficially change and improve my brain long term as well.
Yep. You need to get Bobby Fischer pushing your stuff. So you brought up meditation, and I'm really interested in this. So what do you use, or do you use Headspace, or do you?
I don't use anything for my own meditation. I'm a big fan of breathing. I love Wim Hof method. I love cold exposure.
What do you think you get? So a lot of people that I follow are really getting on the Wim Hof train.
Yeah.
So the Iceman, Wim Hof. So what do you think you accomplish, like, by gaining control over your breathing? I'm interested just personally. Yeah.
So I mean, his method is kind of it's what he's doing is his take on an age-old practice called Tummo. Tummo, I think is how it's spelled. But that's been around for centuries, and that's where the inner fire thing comes from. But it is a way to.
Does it come from Buddhism? Do you know?
It's Eastern. Okay. I don't know if it's Buddhist or Asian. What particular part of Asia it came from? Okay. I don't know. I think something like that. But the idea is that when you are increasing the oxygen in your body, you're oxygenating your cells, and he's using that coupled with the cold exposure. I don't know that original Tummo combined the breathing with cold exposure. Maybe it did. I don't know, but he used it to be able to withstand cold in some really famous ways.
Yeah. Well, and cold exposure can do some great things.
It can,
reducing
yeah.
inflammation and those kind of things.
It does. It increases brown fat, which burns fat instead of storing it, like white fat does.
As opposed to adipose.
Yep. It increases immunity. It helps with metabolism, helps with fat loss. For me, I think, there are these great physiological benefits to cold exposure, but for me, the biggest one has always just been the psychological benefit. From your background that there's strength to be gained from making yourself uncomfortable, from voluntarily going and doing things that are
right now.
that are outside your comfort zone. And for me, no matter what those physiological benefits are, as great as they are, the greatest benefit for me is the psychological one. There's just something about going through your day knowing that you woke up and first thing in the morning you took an ice cold shower.
Is that part of it? Is that what you do?
That's not Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's just that's one way I do it, right? And so you get the benefits of cold exposure there. But you're asking about meditation. Headspace is good. I do Bikram yoga. I do better if I can kind of move and meditate at the same time.
Yeah.
My ADD kicks in too much if I sit there. So I'll either do 5 minutes of breathing, or the Bikram yoga, or I just go for a hike and clear my mind.
Sure.
Those are ways that I meditate, and that's why I say I don't know that there's a right or a wrong way. I don't think you have to sit, in Indian style or in a certain way and bang a gong and chant mantras. Now, if that works for you, great.
Sure.
But if it doesn't, that doesn't mean that you can't meditate, or that meditation doesn't work for you.
Yeah. That's why I cite as my number one reason for ultra running. It's like the most extreme form of meditation I feel like I could take on.
I can totally relate to that.
I'm like, when you're running 12 hours in a 1K loop, the places you have to go in your mind are, it'll push you so far outside of your comfort zone that you have to find center in your mind, which is one of the reasons. But something that I'm interested in is, I come from a military background, and we tend to be a knuckle-dragging type of bunch of guys, right? And
for the record, you said that.
Right. No, I've lived it. And, it's like, I feel like, especially in my job, the average person that is like your average football player, wrestler in high school, meathead type, there is a cognitive aspect to it, so I'm not saying we're idiots. I'm just saying there's a persona there, right?
Right.
And since I've cared about becoming more of a high-performing individual, I've realized that you need to let that go, because you need to be okay with things like breathing in the morning, or meditation, or trying to enhance cognitive function, like all these different things that are just not very cool, right?
Right.
But I don't know, so that's just something
I can see how your type A macho guy would be dismissive of
type A. I could have just said that without all those insults. Got it.
I have to be careful. I'm not former military, so I'm not going to insult anybody.
No, that's good.
And I'm sure a lot of your listeners are former military, so thank you, Rick, and thank you guys, anybody listening, for your service. But I think anybody who's type A. I mean, I used to run a gym, and one of my biggest challenges with getting programs started with local high school football programs were the old school coaches, right? Like, they didn't want my new age methods, and those are the same methods that are now being used in the NFL and in colleges, and keeping people safe. And just because we an example of one of the programs that they did was one of the high schools was benching 3 days a week, just because that's what he did when he was in high school.
Fuck your rotator cuff.
And that particular high school, there were 6 kids in a 12-month period that had shoulder surgery. Yeah. And I'm like, really, dude, please listen to me. I don't care if I make a dime from this. I don't care if I train any of your athletes. Just stop hurting them. Yeah. Right? But there are a lot of people that fit that kind of type A stereotype that are dismissive, or could be dismissive of these more esoteric or woo-woo things like breathing or meditation. And I can, on one sense, I can understand it, but on another hand, it's there's a certain subset of the military, especially the special forces community, where they're romanticized in the public eye for, their mental toughness.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that sets them apart. And I would think that would be the group most likely to adopt, be an early adopter of anything that would enhance cognitive performance or mental toughness.
Yeah.
Or even prolong a career.
Yeah, and I think that's what you'll see. You won't see a lot of maybe the cognitive enhancement yet, just because anything, especially a pill, is like real taboo in the military, the government, whatever.
Right.
And federal government's going to be slow to take on anything like that's leading edge. But on the higher echelons of the military, the higher tiers, you are starting to see athletic trainers that come in. ART is starting to be a thing. Mm-hmm. There's physios in all the athletic training gyms. Trigger point therapy. Like, these are all things that I think, even for me, I got in the military before you saw, people rolling out in CrossFit gyms and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this is something I'm interested in. Since you're into the whole biohacking, like, you are interested in getting the most out of your body. Is there a fitness regimen that you would recommend?
Oh, man. I mean, there's nothing as easy as, or like as, fitting into a pigeonhole as, an answer saying like, hey, I think everybody should do CrossFit. I think it's highly individualized and it's goal dependent again. Mm-hmm. I think.
Do you work out for longevity which is what I see a lot of biohackers do?
Yeah. So now, I've had an interesting kind of fitness journey. I grew up playing sports, but I wasn't good enough to play in college. I went to Clemson, and anybody who follows college football knows that they have some elite athletes.
They're decent.
I wasn't good enough to play basketball or soccer at Clemson. Those were my sports, and I filled that competitive void by lifting weights when I got there. And that led me to bodybuilding, and then that led me into fitness modeling. And then when I got out of fitness modeling, I moved out of New York. I moved back home to Virginia. Mm-hmm. And kind of the pendulum swung the other way, if you will, where, like I'd been, I guess in my mind, everybody kind of viewed me as like the pretty boy, right? Yep. So it was like, all right, I'm going to show them I'm going to be a power lifter and I'm going to get, as strong as I can. And at that point, my lifting was all about, moving weight, mm-hmm. right? And I think I learned... at that point, I think, I realized that that's not sustainable for me. I did that for a few years, and then I started to realize that almost every power lifter at some point in their life had a serious injury. Now, I'm sure there are exceptions, but if you look at all the good ones, mm-hmm. there's a lot.
You're working out a very linear plane of motion.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
And it's just, you're just constantly overloading your body trying to lift more and more weight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the answer to your question is now my focus is more on longevity. I mean, I'm no longer being paid for the way I look. I'm no longer running a gym, mm-hmm. So I'm not, my workouts don't impact that's not my job, right?
Right.
I'm not in the military. I don't need to train for, survival or combat, right?
Yeah.
My workouts are just what I enjoy doing. So I think if we're looking for like a blanket statement or advice for listeners, I think it's, why do you train? And I think answering that question will point you in the direction that you most need to go. If you're military and you're training for combat, your training needs to make you better at combat. If you're a professional athlete, your training needs to make you better at that sport.
Yeah.
If you're a model or a bodybuilder, then your training needs to make you better on stage. If you are, just an everyday person and you want to look better, feel better, be happier.
Go keto.
then your training needs to enhance your life, not dictate it. And that's something that I see, a lot of people, average people, everyday people, fall into this kind of trap of, training a certain way that maybe dictates their life instead of enhancing it. And that's been a big lesson for me, kind of like a recovering fitness addict or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, my training is nowhere near as hard as it used to be, but I have different goals now.
I think that's the byproduct of social media. The whole
I would agree.
People carrying a jug of water around at the Arnold that aren't competing.
Yeah, and I mean, if nothing else, social media is a great place for PRs and, mirror pictures at the gym. And when other people see that, you want to, I do it too. If I hit a PR and somebody videos it, I'm going to post it.
Yeah, I do it.
There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah.
But you get the people that are posting like their cold chicken and broccoli on Thanksgiving Day and be like, #no off days. It's like, well, yeah. You're kind of making your life suck, especially if you're not going to compete.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're not competing or if you're not, if that's not how you earn a living, I would ask, is that really worthwhile?
Sure. Yeah. And as far as diet goes, I just kind of threw in that clip about ketogenic diet, but it actually does make me like a happier person. It gets hard at first when you cut out sugar because you have cravings and you're low on energy, and you have to go through that process where your body starts adapting to fat versus being a sugar burner.
No, I'm a huge fan of being a fat adapted person. That's our biology is that way, and there are a lot of different ways that we can eat today. I don't think keto is for everybody. I think it works well for a lot of people. I think that our carbohydrate intake is directly related to how intensely and how frequently we train. So somebody doing CrossFit multiple times a week is going to have a greater demand for carbohydrates than somebody who only exercises with yoga as the modality. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and if your modality requires that quick burning energy.
Right. So again, it's goal dependent, right? So, look at how you train, what are you trying to get out of your body, and then you match your diet to that. If you're 100 pounds overweight and you're a coder and all you do is sit at the computer and work, then the ketogenic diet may be perfect for you. Or if you don't exercise in a way that needs that quick burst, and then ketogenic is great. I've done it for a long time. I like it. I've recently switched away from it because I do want to start lifting a little bit more explosively, and my lifting is my lifting suffers when I'm full keto. That's just something I've noticed personally.
I agree. Olympic lift for me are what hurt the most.
Yeah, and pure strength. And again, I say that's not.
I think that's pretty natural. That happens.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I like about it is that it takes the focus off of carbs, which I think are the reason why there are so many prevalent diseases today in Western culture, personally. And I think because even paleo is a decently low carb diet. So once you start taking these carbs and these sugars out, you just start seeing biomarkers improve markedly.
No, absolutely. I mean, the one thing that we have to keep in mind is that we've never had the availability of food that we have today. Humans have not had access to food the way we do right now. Yeah. And, even 100 years ago, you think about what your grandparents or great-grandparents had to do, to get a huge meal. Yeah. Compare that to what we have to do today. I mean, on our way home, you and I are going to pass how many different places where we could stop and literally buy more than we could eat. Yeah. And that's not something that has always been around. And I think that's a big contributor. We also spend more time inside than we've ever spent inside as a species. We move way less than we've ever moved. So you combine all these factors and you're going to see biomarkers change. You're going to see health change. Our biology is not changing, cannot change as quickly as science and technology have enabled us to change our lifestyle. So, it does take a little bit of effort on our part to avoid certain things or change our diet, eat a certain way, to optimize our health. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. I think most people, the average person eats way too many carbohydrates. No matter what diet you follow, I would support the idea that keeping carbohydrates to the minimum effective dose is ideal.
Yeah, and that's why I like the ketogenic diet is it makes your body efficiently use carbohydrates, and then it just from a subjective standpoint, how they affect you more, and you can put them in when you need them more, and that's what I use them for.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
There's a whole chapter in my book about how for all the great things that capitalism has given us, like this podcast and the ability to give it to millions of thousands of people, hopefully millions if we keep working, is But if you just consume it with reckless abandon, you're going to wind up somewhere so far from where we were intended to be that it's going to make you miserable or dead.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So when you get back to biohacking, are you, and it might not be in your realm, I haven't listened to your talks, but do you talk about some of these things that come back to like the paleo lifestyle? I don't know if you ever read The Paleo Solution or any of those, like the Rob Wolf book.
Yeah.
But he gets into not just the diet, but the whole lifestyle, like the everything from our sleep patterns to the way we consume food, not just what we eat, things like that.
Yeah, I kind of lump those things into like what I said earlier as like lifestyle habits.
Yeah.
You know, how do you set up your home? You know, I'm a big fan of avoiding blue light at night. You know, I'm that weird biohacker that has red lights.
Do you have the blue blocker sunglasses?
Yes,
Yes.
I do. but
You just
I mean,
put them on at night?
I actually, I've got a blue blocker screen on my phone, on my computer. There's something called Drift TV that you can hook up to your TV. So if you're watching it at night, it actually blocks blue light from your TV.
Nice.
All of those screens, phones, computer, TV, those are the biggest culprits of blue light that we're exposed to now. So if you're using those after dark, that will. So your pineal gland is a photoreceptor in your brain, and it, you know, when you have that blue light come in, your pineal gland is aware of it. It affects melatonin production, and you know you're not able to get to sleep as quickly, and you don't get the quality of sleep that we need. So it's disruptive to sleep, and you know, as we talked about earlier, that's going to impact you the next day, and then over the long run, that impacts, you know, traits.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, to me, that's like part of the lifestyle stuff. Grounding, like going outside barefoot, going outside with your shirt off, no matter what the temperature is, just to get some vitamin D and some sunshine.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think if you want to call those biohacks, then call them biohacks. If you want to call it ancestral or paleo, you know, I think depending on who you talk to, those get lumped into different categories.
They do, and they are different actually. Like ancestral health and paleo, paleo has taken on this whole movement that almost can't be stopped at this point.
Right.
Because now you have packaged paleo products. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I think ancestral health is getting more to like eating for the season and what's around you and that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I think all those things go. They to me they fall under lifestyle. And
Do you notice a real difference from the blue blockers?
I've been doing it for so long. I don't know. I mean, I guess when I did, I started sleeping better.
I have some hardcore sleep issues, so I'm interested.
It's worth a shot.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I would definitely suggest
But I don't need
the screen.
Yeah, my computer. That's probably the big thing. I'm on at night.
I would get. You can just buy a screen that you put over top of your laptop.
That blocks the blue.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like a cell phone cover. You wouldn't even know it's there.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. You can also get. There's a program called Flux, F.Lux, and it syncs to wherever you are geographically. So after the sun goes down, it starts to reduce the blue light on your screen. So it changes the display.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's very
so
cool.
It's kind of like jailbreaking your laptop. So
Yeah.
definitely go for Flux.
Have you messed around with the chili pad at all?
I haven't. I had one of the original versions of it. It may have been a different name, different company, but
Yeah.
I got one, and it moved around way too much underneath of me, and it never stayed in place the way it was supposed to.
Yeah.
So it was just more of a pain.
Nice.
But I like the idea in theory. Maybe the new version is better in reality, but I don't have experience with the new one.
Yeah. I run hot, so I got to try it out.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
All right. So the last thing I want to get to, we touched on it at the beginning, but the more of the natural neurotropics. You said like lion's mane and that kind of thing. I've just started getting into that world, and I'm realizing how vast it is.
Yeah.
What do you guys carry as far as? We'll start with mushrooms.
Yeah, so we just launched back around Thanksgiving we call it the Myco line, Myco for mushrooms. So we have 3 different products, and they're really innovative and cool formulas. We have 3. One is Myco Mind. It is lion's mane mushroom with BioPQQ. So you have BioPQQ is a mitochondrial enhancer,
Okay.
and that's mixed with the lion's mane mushroom, which, as you said earlier, increases nerve growth factor.
Yep.
Right. So that's kind of that's marketed as our brain cell optimizer.
Okay.
We have Myco Boost, which is yerba mate and cordyceps mushroom. So cordyceps is the one that has gotten a lot of publicity for increasing ATP production and efficiency, increases endurance, work capacity. That's a really cool product.
Are these in a pill?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're in a pill, but this is something cool that I figured out recently, and I've actually we actually shared this today in an email and last week on a YouTube video. But I've been cracking the pills open and just dumping them in hot water, and you can make a mushroom tea that easily.
Oh, they don't taste awful?
No, they taste great.
Oh, okay.
And I actually,
I would like that because I get worried about consuming a lot of the pills.
A lot of those plastics. I do that a lot, and that's actually why I thought to do that.
Yeah.
Because I do, like our biocreatine is in a pill form, and a lot of times instead of taking 4 of those after a workout, I'll just open them up and just take them straight.
Yep.
Because if I might take 15 or 20 pills a day, and I don't always want 15 or 20 of those plastic things inside of me.
Because I've seen them. I've seen them inside of me in a pile. Yeah, legitimately.
So, and then the third one is Myco-Immune, and it is chaga, reishi, and turkey tail. Mm-hmm. So, those are all powerful immunomodulators that help our body to increase antioxidant capacity, reduce oxidative stress. They support DNA stability and function, cellular repair and replication.
Yeah.
So, reishi and chaga and turkey tail have all been used in like ancient Russian, Chinese, Native American immortality and longevity tonics.
Okay.
So again, it kind of speaks to, whether you want to call it ancestral or, it's been around for a long time, and people have been trying to optimize health and mental performance.
With them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is yerba mate? What does that do? I hear Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
He always makes that a staple in it.
It's basically a tea. Somebody's going to probably correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it's not a tea, but yeah, it's basically a tea.
I've only seen it in a tea, so.
Yeah, I mean, you treat it like tea.
Yeah.
I think technically it's like an avocado is a fruit. It's not the vegetable.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
It's one of those.
Avocado is a fruit?
It's semantics.
Learn something every day.
Right.
More you know.
So yerba mate is basically a tea.
Okay.
And it's got some really cool psychoactive compounds, like not psychedelic, but psychoactive the same way caffeine or coffee is.
So is it
I
energy
think
enhancing?
It does have a little bit of caffeine in it.
Okay.
Ours has about 20 milligrams, but it's full body vitality, and we recently took a trip to Breckenridge. We were snowboarding and skiing. We filmed a product out there, and that's where I was. I showed the rest of our team how to make the tea out of the Myco Boost, especially, and because it's half yerba mate, that tastes awesome already.
Yeah.
But of course, if people like it sweet, you can add liquid stevia or you can add powdered stevia. I actually add mulling spices to mine, like clove, cinnamon, things like that, because those are great health compounds in themselves.
They increase biomarkers just by themselves.
Yeah, so it gives you a little bit of flavor, smells like Christmas, and tastes great.
That's why we put cinnamon in our creatine coffee too. Exact same reason.
Nice. So yeah, and that's when we were out there, like you just, especially at altitude, you really noticed the ability to kind of go a little bit longer without that lactic acid.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because where we were was...
Which one was that?
Myco Boost. That's the one with cordyceps.
Okay.
And cordyceps is actually...
have to stress test that.
It's grown... Yeah, do it. Let us know.
Yeah.
We'll get you a bottle and you can test it for us.
Yeah. I got 100K on Sunday.
All right. So cordyceps is... It's a fungus that grows on a caterpillar in the mountains of northern China.
Okay.
It's really cool, and I think that probably has something to do with, its genesis there. Probably has something to do with the way that it is able to increase ATP.
Yeah. It must. Yeah, like the height it's grown at, you mean? Or
it has to.
it
has to have that kind of a biological function for, what it actually does.
That is interesting. I always wonder, is there somebody going around, scientists, or just get grants and they go scrape this shit off rocks and take it?
Well, again, people have been using that stuff for centuries. So somebody hundreds of years ago, saw ancient Chinese people doing it.
Yeah.
Hey, what is that? Why are you doing it? And it has kind of trickled down. And I guess now with the age of the internet and supplement companies, it's gained a lot of traction.
Sure. There's probably a lot more big money now.
Yeah. It also helped that I think in the 90s, some Russians were doing it, and or maybe it was no, I think it was the Chinese. They had like one of their women's either swimmers or sprinters were using it before the Olympics, and then they all tested positive for doping and
Really?
had their medals stripped. Yeah.
Wow.
It's one of the most cited.
Wait, the product that you have?
Well, so they were using cordyceps and
Okay.
illegal stuff.
Okay.
So one of the most cited studies on cordyceps is actually like basically debunked because the people were also using steroids.
Okay. Yeah. So. That'll happen.
Yeah.
Are you involved in the formulation?
A little bit, but not that much. We've got a product development and a supply chain side. Well, I am on the marketing side, so and I do have the degree in science. I'm kind of nerdy and passionate about it, so I learn about it as we're developing it and kind of have some input on that. But I'm not the product development side.
Gotcha. Do you test them all out?
I do test them
right
all
out of the
out.
gate.
Yeah.
First one to take them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yep.
But like I said, I mean, I was the one to kind of say like, hey, like we can actually make a tea with these, and everybody that tasted the tea was shocked. You had the Endless Frontier guys on a previous podcast, and we recorded one with them, and when they came over to record it, I had all of them drinking it, and they were surprised that it tastes really good.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would recommend to enhance cognitive function that doesn't have that energy factor? Reason I'm asking is because, I mean, personally, I try to get a lot of writing done at night. But I can't. I want to take coffee because I want to just crank out work, but I won't sleep.
That's a challenge, and I have the same challenge too because, I mean, this is running your own business, kind of being an entrepreneur. You kind of go when the inspiration hits,
right?
And sometimes it is hard to turn it off at night. We've got something called Smart Caffeine, and it's a combination of L-theanine and caffeine. I know it does have caffeine in it, but L-theanine has been shown in studies to reduce caffeine's sleep disruption. So it could be something. We've got a lot of Natural Stacks product users, Smart Caffeine users that are like law enforcement, Coast Guard especially, who have written in to me and us and said like, hey, if I get a call and I have to get up and go out, like I take Smart Caffeine, I'm able to be alert, do what I need to do, and then I can go back home and go to sleep. I've never taken it late at night for writing, so I don't know, but that would be something I might try. I've tried Lion's Mane at night, but even though it's non-stimulant, my mind is just racing so much
going for it.
That my eyes, I can't keep my eyes open, but my brain won't slow down, so I'm not able to fall asleep. So
that's frustrating.
Now one of our co-founders does take MycoMind at night, and he works well that way. So it's definitely something
product
maybe
is
try.
that?
That's the MycoMind, the one with Lion's Mane and BioPQQ.
Yep.
So you mentioned Lion's Mane. But I mean, obviously, I'm going to tell you to take Natural Stacks.
Sure.
But I mean, there's
I mean, if it works, it works. Right?
I like the Four Sigmatic, the Lion's Mane tea that they have. I think that tastes great.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm working with right now. I'm trying it out.
Yeah.
I've been putting cacao in there and then some cinnamon. Been awesome.
Yeah. Cinnamon's an awesome spice.
Yeah.
It increases insulin sensitivity, regulates blood sugar. Yeah. Does a whole bunch of other stuff. So,
for sure. Has your biohacking quest taken you anywhere near psychedelics?
Yeah. So we've had a few psychedelic experts on our podcast.
Okay. I saw DMT in the title of one of them. I haven't got to it yet.
Yeah. So we've actually had 3 different episodes where we talked about ayahuasca. Recently, we had Rick Strassman on, who wrote the book DMT: The Spirit Molecule, which was actually turned into that movie, DMT: The Spirit Molecule.
I think I heard him on Dave Asprey's podcast.
I know he's been on. I think maybe he's been on Bulletproof Radio. I think he's been on Joe Rogan a few times.
Okay.
We also had Rick Doblin from MAPS on. I met him at the Float conference, and he came on to talk about how they're using MDMA for cognitive therapies.
Really?
They're helping
people.
Like
microdosing?
Yeah, and it's actually helping people get through PTSD.
Yeah.
Because it creates kind of a safe place to examine this memory and almost recreate it or restore it in a way that doesn't have the trauma attached to it.
Yeah.
it's really fascinating to hear him talk about it and hear what they're doing. But that was really cool. So it is taking me close. I don't have any personal experience yet.
Yeah.
But maybe one day.
Yeah. I've heard multiple people get out of the military.
Yeah.
And it's people have a lot of trouble adjusting to civilian life for reasons other than just the structure is gone and things like that. And I've heard a lot of people have success with ayahuasca.
Yeah. Ayahuasca is a good one. MDMA, well, obviously with the MDMA and the DMT that Rick Doblin and Rick Strassman talked about, those were used with therapists who have licensing from the FDA to use those for medical treatment.
Studies. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not like people are taking these recreationally.
Yeah. Well, that's cool because my understanding has been that the FDA has been really hard to loosen up on.
Yeah, and actually with Rick's treatment at MAPS, they do several introductory sessions with the therapist before they introduce the psychedelic to establish the trust, the relationship, to kind of get through to the point where they're ready for that breakthrough, and then and only then at that session do they introduce the psychedelics.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm day one. I'm headed to Peru when I get out of the military.
Are you?
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
No, it's something I've been interested in for a while
I've
now.
been invited to many, especially down in Texas, and every time I go, I try to call these guys and tell them I'm going, and their phones are all turned off because they're actually in ceremony. And I'm like,
Really?
You guys got to answer my phone call.
In Texas?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Austin.
And I've heard it's getting big too. So I've heard
Yeah.
a lot of times it's almost a tourist thing now. So you
Yes.
gotta navigate that.
Yeah.
too.
So one of the guests that we had on the show was actually they were involved with getting some shamans residence in Austin, and they set up kind of a church to where they can do it there.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool because having a good shaman is key to the whole entire experience from here.
Yeah, they actually
guide you through it.
Yeah, there's kind of a group of them that I'm not sure how big the group is, but I know 2 or 3 of the people in the group that participate in these ceremonies pretty frequently. So they actually they do it enough, and the group is big enough to where the shaman's actually relocated to that spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, is there anything else that you wanna touch on that we didn't get to talk about, or anything you wanna push?
I think we covered it all. I'd feel bad pushing Natural Stacks anymore. I think we talked about it a lot. So
Yeah. Well, where can they find it though?
Yeah, so all of our social media is at Natural Stacks, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Podcast is Optimal Performance Podcast. We've got some great guests on there and really trying to help people on there. And then my personal stuff is at Ryan Munsey _ on Instagram.
Very cool. Yeah, I appreciate you coming on because like I told you, I had the same preconceived notions that most people do about biohacking. And I hate to say, but I'm more interested in it now for sure.
Well, good. I did my job.
I think it's really what I care about. I just haven't called it that.
Yeah,
and a lot of people.
I agree. I've seen a lot of your words, knuckle jaggers, but like some type A, especially like some people that were in the strongman community or that didn't like the word biohacker or people don't like the word hack because what it implies. And it's not. I guess I can't iterate that enough. That it's not about seeking shortcuts. It's about understanding how a system works and then manipulating the inputs in your favor to get a more desirable output.
Yeah, which is why we do anything.
Yeah,
Right?
and I would urge people to not miss out on that just because you don't like the name that somebody else gave it.
That's fair. Right.
All in the name of growth and optimization.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks for being on.
Chip the
Thanks for having me, Rick.
Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. Don't forget to rate us and download our other episodes. For your supplement needs, go to louavive.com, and for your sports therapy needs, visit movement-rx.com.
This Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland is the city where it's hustle or you hopeless. In my closet like a stove, bitch. Only difference is you ain't gon' find this in no stove, bitch. I'm fresher than your whole clique.